If you have heard or shared the ritual sacrifice theory, this note is not meant to judge you. It is natural to look for an explanation that feels as intense as the pain or outrage you see. Wanting clarity, wanting justice, wanting someone to be responsible, that is human, and it shows you care. At the same time, there is an important distinction between stories that help us understand how power actually works and stories that, however gripping, end up protecting the very systems that caused the harm. Sharing certain narratives can unintentionally shift attention away from the mechanisms, the contracts, the surveillance, and the escalation logic that actually allow injustice to happen, and that means the same patterns can repeat. This piece asks only that you pause before spreading stories that explain evil as mystery, not to silence your anger or doubt, but to give it a direction that is effective rather than symbolic. You can be furious, you can mourn, and you can demand accountability while still seeing clearly how systems operate. Think of this as a simple question. Which explanation actually makes it harder for the same harm to happen again? That is what matters. Think twice before you spread the ritual sacrifice theory, because you might be inadvertently helping the enemy. In moments of shock and moral outrage, people reach for explanations that feel commensurate with the horror they are trying to process. When an individual dies under suspicious circumstances, especially after prolonged surveillance, control, and visible coercion, it is tempting to believe that something unspeakably dark must be at work. This is how the ritual sacrifice theory gains traction. But the danger of this theory lies not in its strangeness, it lies in its usefulness to power. Totalitarian systems do not survive by persuading everyone. They survive by preventing understanding. And nothing does that more effectively than turning institutional violence into metaphysical evil. From mechanism to myth. What actually terrifies regimes is not public anger. Anger can be absorbed, redirected, exhausted. What they fear is structural clarity, the ability of ordinary people to recognize patterns, handlers, contracts, surveillance, escalation, punishment. The ritual sacrifice narrative dissolves these patterns instantly. Instead of asking, who enforced control? Through what administrative mechanisms? Under what escalation logic? With which institutional incentives? The conversation is dragged into an abyss of the unknowable, secret cabals, occult motives, irrational monstrosity. Once violence is framed this way, it can no longer be analyzed, anticipated, or resisted. This is not new. Hannah Arendt warned that when power becomes too visible, it often retreats into mystification. Stalinism explained terror through class essence. The Cultural Revolution blamed bloodline guilt. Late Soviet collapse was obscured by endless conspiracies about traitors and foreign plots. In each case, violence was desocialized, cut loose from institutions and turned into fate. The result was the same: outrage without comprehension. Why the theory feels right. The ritual theory spreads because it satisfies emotional needs that structural explanations do not. Structural analysis is cold, it is slow, it demands attention to paperwork, hierarchy, routine cruelty, and banal compliance. It offers no catharsis, no villain worthy of myth. Conspiracy, by contrast, feels radical. It flatters the speaker with forbidden knowledge. It allows grief to transform into rage without discipline. As Slavoj Žižek has noted, ideology survives not through belief alone, but through enjoyment. Conspiracy is enjoyable, structure is not. That enjoyment is precisely the trap. How the theory serves the regime. Here is the hard truth. Spreading the ritual sacrifice theory does the regime's work for it. It shifts blame away from identifiable institutions, makes coercion appear aberrant instead of administrative, prevents accountability by making causes untraceable, destroys structural literacy among the public. Most importantly, it protects the gray zone, the space where power operates unofficially, deniably, and incrementally. Contracts that do not protect. Handlers who do not appear in records. Surveillance that is temporary until it is not. Punishment that escalates quietly until it becomes irreversible. These mechanisms thrive in darkness. Myth provides that darkness. The tragic irony. Many who spread the ritual theory believe they are honoring the victim. In reality, they are helping ensure that the mechanism remains intact, ready to claim the next one. This is the deepest irony of modern repression. The most morally outraged citizens often become unwitting allies of the system they despise, not because they are malicious, but because they are deprived of the tools to think structurally. Totalitarian systems consistently marginalize thinkers like Arendt, Foucault, Levi, and Agamben, whose ideas train readers to perceive power early, before violence becomes visible. They are ignored because they are dangerous. They teach people how to see power before it kills, not after. Conspiracy teaches people how to scream after the fact. If you care about justice, stop helping power hide. You do not need to defend the official story to reject the ritual theory. You do not need to deny cruelty to refuse myth. What you need to do is insist on mechanism over mystery. Ask who benefited from control, who enforced compliance, who escalated punishment, through what institutional channels, with what historical precedents. These questions are harder, they are less emotionally satisfying, but they are the only ones that threaten power. Totalitarian regimes operating in grey zones do not fear outrage. They fear understanding because it collapses ambiguity into accountability. So think twice before you share a story that replaces structure with superstition, because every time you do, you are not exposing darkness. You are helping it spread.